The war in Ukraine has not even completed a fortnight, but a diplomatic fallout is already in the making. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has called his country's relationship with Russia ironclad, offering strong support to Russia. At an annual press conference, the Chinese Foreign Minister lauded Russia. Wang Yi called Russia the most important strategic partner. He also condemned the West's naked double standards, as he put it, on China's territorial claims towards Taiwan. Listen in.
The friendship between Chinese and Russian people is rock solid. There is a bright prospect for cooperation between the two sides. No matter how precarious and challenging the international situation may be, China and Russia will maintain strategic focus and steadily advance our comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for a new era.
While China has supported Russia's opposition of NATO expansion, Russia has endorsed China's view of Taiwan as an inalienable part of China. Russia and China have mutually supported each other's core interests. Only recently in February, the leaders of the two nations had met in Beijing, just before Russia began its invasion of Ukraine. Needless to say, the ongoing war is bound to have a major fallout on the Indo-Pacific and Europe too. Putin's military might is bound to impact China's President Xi Jinping. Russian actions have already signaled China's need for more muscular policies in the case of Taiwan. More importantly, Putin's resolve has challenged the limits of NATO. His attack on Ukraine and NATO's response has left Indo-Pacific nations with the big question: how far is the West willing to get involved in an Indo-Pacific conflict? Especially considering most Western nations have a low stake in the Indo-Pacific, not to forget the crisis in Afghanistan, which has been placed on the back burner by the West, including the Quad and the European Union. The dynamics within Europe are also changing overnight. Germany has spectacularly changed course. The country has dramatically increased its military spending. An initial injection of $253 billion will now be followed by an annual 2% of GDP dedicated in each budget. Moreover, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced that his country will join the rest of Europe in providing weapons to Ukraine. The move defies Germany's standing policy prohibiting the sale of arms to war zones. Suddenly, Russia's invasion has forced a more unified response out of EU nations. NATO has rushed eastward. Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia hastily agreed to become a forward post for NATO troops. Even a neutral nation like Switzerland has joined the EU's economic sanctions targeting Russia. A non-NATO member, Sweden, has been granted special access to NATO intelligence. Europe's southeast is equally galvanized. Bosnia is mulling over a formal bid to join NATO, and Kosovo is now making a pitch for a permanent US base on its territory. French troops have been sent into Romania as a mark of European solidarity. So much so, a nation like Turkey, known to walk the middle path between Russia and NATO, has also closed the Turkish straits to warships. This will hamper Russia's ability to move more ships from the Mediterranean into the Black Sea and then onto southern Ukraine. WION, of course, is getting you all the latest updates of the conflict unfolding in Ukraine as we speak. Our correspondent Anas Malik now joins us live from Ukraine's capital, Kiev. Anas, thanks so much for joining us. You have been reporting for WION about the refugee crisis in particular for days now. What's the latest on the evacuation attempts in Europe?
Well, I was at Irpin. As I talked to you, there was some shelling done somewhere near, but these shellings, they continue. I was in Irpin just a short while back, and we heard that there was immense shelling being done, immense gunfire being done, evacuation process was underway. I was at the Bucha district of Irpin that connects, and I was at that very bridge that connects Bucha to the rest of Irpin. Irpin is about 27 kilometers from the city of Kiev, where I am currently, from the capital city of Kiev, and there have been, the Russian forces have advanced. Earlier they were said to be on the Irpin side of the river, of the bridge and the river, but now they have moved towards the river itself, and they continue with their advancements while the Ukrainian forces are resisting. Now, en route from Kiev city towards Irpin is where I saw a couple of evacuation buses and a medical camp as well. We reported from there, and people in thousands and thousands, mostly women, children, and the elderly, they're being evacuated to safety. About 1.7 million people have moved in the past 11 days or so since the invasion began, and the number continues to increase. Priyanka?
Absolutely. Anas, we're also getting reports, as you just pointed out, that nearly 1.7 million, and this number is expected to go as high as 2 million refugees as a result of this conflict. What more can you tell us about this? What kind of efforts are being made to provide shelter to these people who are trying to flee their homeland?
Well, at this point of time, it won't be wrong to say that in the absence of a formal government, when I say in the absence of a formal government, it's not that the government is missing, but it's just that the government's priorities, while it is there to safeguard its citizens as well, it is there to safeguard its land as well, and looks like the whole focus is to safeguard the land. The reason we're seeing this migrant crisis growing big, but one thing that is to be noted is the fact that the people of Ukraine have been responding in a much more tremendous manner to this refugee situation. They've been opening their houses, they've been opening their schools, their restaurants. Operas have been turned into refugee shelters. Libraries have been turned into refugee shelters. So that explains how the people of Ukraine have been responding to this untoward situation that has just arisen to them about 15 days or so earlier. One thing that is to be noticed, the fact that a lot of refugees are fleeing from where I am in Kiev, from Irpin, from associated areas, that is towards center, north and east, areas that are more closer in proximity to the Russian border. Either they're going towards the west. Their first destination is Lviv in the west, and then onwards they decide to go, whether they have to go to the European countries. If they intend on going to the European countries, then they go there. Otherwise, they tend to stay back in Lviv. Priyanka?
Absolutely. Anas, you of course have an on-ground perspective of this conflict. You were earlier in Lviv, where you brought us reports from bunkers. You told us about people queuing up outside railway stations to flee the country. And now you're in the heart of the conflict, Kiev. There are reports coming in that Russian troops are trying to close in on the capital. The third round of talks between Russia and Ukraine has failed to achieve a breakthrough. Tell us what's happening in Kiev, in the capital. What are the people of Kiev feeling at this point? Is there a palpable fear around you?
Well, there is a scare that is there that can be felt in the city. There are lesser vehicles on the road, more and more militarized vehicles. When I say militarized vehicles, would be these vans that are there. They're full of army personnel. There are ambulances like these. That's one right behind me. You'd be able to see very shortly, like the ambulances like these, which are being used to transport injured or the elderly. These ambulances like these are also being used for evacuation purposes as well. Then you would see immense military reinforcement deployments, such as tanks, trucks, armored personnel vehicle carriers, armored personnel carriers, the APCs. You'd see army personnel with rocket launchers, with grenade launchers in their hand. That's not a sight that you'd be seeing every day. So that does instigate that element of fear in you as to what happens next. There are lesser people out on the roads. Grocery shops and supermarkets are running out of everyday items, and to the point that trains that go from Kiev to Lviv or elsewhere, they bring in these items, these everyday essentials. But despite of that, they're being stocked up. I'll give you an example. Just today in the morning, the hotel where I am, we asked for bread for breakfast, and then they said that they've ran out of bread for the quota of the day, because they've been asked to stock up and to pile up. So that goes on to explain that fear that is there, and how Ukrainians are prepping for the worst that is yet to come. That is yet to come, or if it comes at all. Priyanka?
Anas Malik, thank you so much for all those updates and insights, and thanks for joining us on Beyond. We'll of course continue to come back to you for more updates, since you're reporting for us from Kiev in Ukraine. Beyond World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.